Well, thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.
My name's Hannah. I'm currently a researcher at the BBC Natural History Unit based in Bristol in the UK. At the moment, we're deep into the edit of a new programme that I can't say too much about at this stage, but I'm excited for it to come out. It'll be in a couple of months' time. It's got a big, heavy conservation angle to it and features some incredibly inspiring individuals, as well as, of course, amazing wildlife. So I'm excited for that to come out.
That's so great. And what is your educational background?
So I went to the University of Exeter to study zoology. I would study abroad. It was a 4-year course, during which time in my 3rd year I studied in Colorado in the US, which was amazing. I absolutely loved it. And then, I graduated in 2017, so a few years ago now.
Yeah. All right. And how did you get into conservation?
I think my response to this is probably quite standard. I've always loved wildlife
and
being in nature, which is probably what most people say. But I was definitely that kid that would move a worm off the playground so that no one trampled it.
Yeah.
And this love, I think, grew and grew. But especially at school, when I sort of said, I like wildlife, I like animals, the general response for what I would grow up to be would be either a zookeeper or a vet. Those were, the 2 options out there. And for me personally, I pursued becoming a vet. I worked for 3 years on Saturdays and in my school holidays at a veterinary practice. I really enjoyed it. It was a great experience. But I found myself leaning more towards what I now understand as being more conservation-based interests. But it wasn't until I was doing my AS level biology that my new teacher had studied zoology at university, and it was talking to her about what that was, what avenues that could lead to, that meant I was literally at the point of submitting my application to study veterinary, and I pulled back and went down the zoology route. I think to the surprise of my teachers and everybody, they were like, where's she going with this? But I think that was sort of my route.
Okay, very similar then to myself. I feel like I also felt like it was just, you could be a zookeeper, you could be a vet, like there's nothing in between, but there is actually so much in between. I wish that there was more out there for young people and young women especially to see that there are so many opportunities.
No, definitely. It even comes into like children's books, and you look at what careers adults have, and I guess I like the look of the explorer, but it was a man in an explorer's hat and some khaki. And I guess I definitely agree with that. There needs to be more of a push for those things. And that's what's great now. There are so many different avenues, and you can pull together those interests. And it is just raising more awareness that it's possible.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, do you think your career experience has been affected by your gender? We've been talking about this a little bit.
Yeah. I think it's a hard one because it's not always, I don't think it would necessarily always be obvious, but I think in my current role within the industry that I'm in, I would say no, it's not been massively affected. Having said that, I think within the industry as a whole, there's definitely more heavily male-dominated roles, and then more roles that are dominated by women. I think the main one that sticks out instantly is the role of being a camera operator. So I've done quite a bit of filming myself before, but then if I think about what it is that's potentially limited me in pushing further with it, I would say the way in which cameras and equipment are weighted, how they're sized, how they're there's definitely limitations that I found within me, and that's not saying that women can't cameras do cameras. There are amazing wildlife female filmmakers out there. It's just something that I know that talking to other women in the industry is something that has impacted quite a few of us. Having said that, there's a huge push towards technology where cameras are becoming smaller. There are rigs that you can get now that you can put on your back to help support the weight of things. That's definitely something that I see changing. Having said that, the only time I would say that I do have to be more aware of the differences that there might be with me being a woman is when I'm out in the field or I'm on location, particularly in countries where there's different cultures, different religions. I have to be aware of how I'm dressed. I also have to be aware of, and it's happened on occasion where perhaps people that we're working with would rather speak to a male on the team than a female, where equality isn't quite as prevalent. Mm-hmm. There have been other comments where there was a man once said that I couldn't fly the drone because I was a girl, or drive because I was a female. Yeah, I think there's definitely things that you have to overcome, but I have to say that within my role that I'm currently fulfilling, apart from being more of aware of it when I'm on location, the job that I do day to day, I don't think that I've necessarily been affected too much by my gender. Okay.
And how did you get into film specifically within conservation?
That's a really interesting one. So for me personally, growing up, I loved watching wildlife shows. A lot of them really inspired me. And I guess at the back of my head, I had this dream job of working on wildlife television. But I was never sure of how to do that. At my school, they didn't teach film, cameras. Apart from borrowing my parents' camera and going a bit happy snappy taking pictures, I didn't have any experience like that. And whilst I sort of had that in the back of my mind, I wanted to be interested in it. I decided that the conservation aspect was the thing that was most important to me, and I wanted to really focus on that. So doing zoology, studying zoology was my primary focus. And then it was while I was at university, I was actually in my first year, and one of my flatmates, her boyfriend studied film and was part of the American football team. And I said that I was interested in filming, and he said, "Oh, well, come along to a game and I'll show you how to film." So I filmed an American football game. That was the first bit of filming I ever did. Yeah. And I'm glad I did. So that got me interested in cameras, and then from there so it's becoming quite a long answer.
That's okay.
I started making my own films, and slowly but surely found ways of incorporating the two, which would deliver the messages that I kind of wanted to get out.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So it seems like you've done like a lot of traveling and a lot of different experiences like that. Can you tell me where your favorite place you've ever traveled, your favorite animal, and your favorite thing you've ever filmed?
Oh, okay. What have you got? Favorite place I've travelled? It has to be Kenya, I think. Mm-hmm. While I was at university, one of me and another student set up our own organisation, which involved making local language films within a country. So we felt that there were a lot of films being made like across Africa for a Western audience, but there weren't many people making them for a local one. So we went out to Kenya after graduation for 6 months, and we made 10 local language films about inspiring people doing amazing things to protect the wildlife. These were in Ma and Swahili, and then we showed them back to communities using a bicycle-powered cinema. So this was my first sort of time where I was there for 6 months. It gave me, and I had freedom to be able to really get to know the people out there. That was something that was really special, to get to know the people on the ground that were doing these amazing conservation efforts. And I think tying into the question you asked about what inspired me about getting into wildlife conservation with television is, I think, the power to be able to reach so many people. Shows like Planet Earth 2, I think, had 9 million viewers on its very first episode, which is a huge responsibility for the messages that you're showing, but it also shows a great ability to be able to reach a lot of people with the content. But yeah, I think in terms of places I've traveled, Kenya was amazing, but it was purely because of the people that I met along the way and being welcomed into the culture in that sense. Favorite animal? I'd have to pick two. Elephants, I think, are just amazing, beautiful, so intelligent, the connections that they have with their family, And if you can look at an elephant in the wild, it's magic. It really is magical. And the other one would be a giraffe. Slightly different response. They just make me smile when I look at them. You can have a huge tree and the giraffe will just have its head popping out the top and it thinks it's hiding and it's not. So yeah, giraffe. But having said that, giraffes, their populations have declined by, I think it's 40% in the last 30 years, which is shocking when you have such an iconic animal that many people love that's had its population so vastly decimated. What hope is there for the species that maybe aren't getting as much coverage? And I think that that's something that, for me personally, with this industry, is something I'm excited about, that conservation is something that is now being talked about far more than it ever was. And I've noticed a huge difference just in the last 5 years that I've been in it. When I first came into the industry and pitched my first ever film idea, I was told that it had this C word in it, conservation, so we weren't going to go down that route. And I was shocked. I was so shocked that was the response. However, having said that, a few years on, it's flipped entirely, and productions are being commissioned purely because of their conservation approach. So yeah. And then what was the third question?
What's your favorite thing you've ever filmed?
Favorite thing I filmed? I think the most to split it, I think the most powerful thing I potentially filmed was Sudan, the last male northern white rhino. Mm-hmm. I filmed with him just a few weeks before he passed away, and that was such a publicized event, and it really rocked the conservation world. So I think that was something that was quite powerful. My favorite thing for enjoyment that I've ever filmed has to be, I think, for Deadly 60, which was Orca in Norway. Mm-hmm. In the Norwegian fjords, it was so beautiful, and there was one particular moment where I was filming the presenter talking to camera, and he was holding a herring, sorry, not a heron, that would be odd. He was holding a herring, and then there was this almighty just rush of water from behind us, and this huge humpback whale breached the surface with its huge mouth open to catch the herring, literally a few meters away. And it made the cut of the show, because you see me with the camera pan keeping it on the presenter as his face is open wide, and it was just so raw. And I think what excites me about it is every time I watch it, I feel like I was there again, and I feel that rush of energy that I had. And I think the ability to be able to engage with the audience and make them feel like they're there is something that that can be quite powerful in television.
That's amazing. No, that sounds so interesting. So what has been your career highlight then?
Career highlight. I think I've been really lucky to work on a variety of different shows, from Planet Earth 3 to one called The Year Earth Changed, which was one that I worked on during COVID, and it was about wildlife and how it'd been impacted by COVID around the world. But this one was narrated by Sir David Attenborough, which was something I had on my bucket list. I really wanted to work on a show with him. I think he's amazing. So doing that was pretty cool. But I have to say, if I have to go on like highlight, I think it has to be finding out that I'd gotten the position of researcher and second camera operator on Deadly 60.
Okay.
For anyone that doesn't know, it's a children's show for CBBC presented by Steve Backshall. But it was something that I watched when I was a child, and for me, my dream job was to be one of the crew. I'd sit there, watch the show, make notes in my planner about all the wildlife. So when I got a bit older, I was in the industry, and I saw the job advertised. I thought, I've got to go for it. I never expected to actually get it, but I went for it. But the other thing about the series that I worked on that was particularly exciting was that it had this conservation angle. Every single episode had a nod to a conservation issue, whether it was poaching and the illegal wildlife trade, to deforestation, ocean plastic. And for me, it felt really great that we were making a show about these important messages for such a young audience, because I know that show itself impacted me in the way that I went on to follow a career and just have a passion for the natural world. And I think sort of going full cycle, but also now putting in these conservation issues is something that I'm personally really passionate about. And again, the link between conservation and television, I've been lucky to be able to somewhat have some choice of what I work on, and if it's got that conservation angle, then I'm so much more interested and passionate about it. And I think if you're passionate about something, it comes through. And also the ability to be able to show more of the local people working day in and day out, and the scientists and the researchers that are doing all of this work. Again, it's something that wildlife television is going further into and has the ability to be able to share, which is exciting.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing.
That's the other thing that's great, I think, with social media. I think everybody has a camera nowadays in their pocket on their phone. And I think I always say that if you've got any interest in it whatsoever, just start filming, start editing things together and sharing it. And that it really is the power of social media now, that anybody can do it. Yeah.
So what advice would you give a student, specifically women, entering the conservation field?
Okay. I think the biggest advice I would have is, if you're passionate and you love something, don't let anything dissuade you from going for it, and have the confidence in your abilities to chase down that passion or dream that you have. If there's something that I could tell my younger self, it's to trust more in my own abilities, especially when it comes to whatever stage of life you're in, or whatever role, because you can do it, and you're there for a reason. I often find myself battling this inner demon of imposter syndrome, which I don't know the stats per se, but I know it's something that people say women do struggle more with. But I do think that it's something that's far more common than we ever think it is. Whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, it's something that people do struggle with. But along those lines, I think it's so much easier said than done, but try not to let comments from others impact your personal path. An example that I can think of when I was impacted by something like this was, I was fresh, I was new to the industry, and there was a call put forward looking for someone to do a voiceover for a short film, and I put myself forward for it, and someone who is quite high in the industry said straight away, "You can't do it." And when I asked them why, they said it was because I had a northern accent, and northern accents sound depressing on wildlife films. And I was like, okay. Now that I'm a few years in, I can laugh about it, and I can see that it wasn't a valid comment.
No.
There's so much diversity, and that's something that really shouldn't have been said.
No.
But having said that, because I was so fresh and I was so new, and this was someone of power saying it, I did believe it, and I thought, oh, crikey, yeah, no, you're right. Not many northern voices are there. Depressing? Oh, I need to work on that. And to be honest, to this day, I've never put myself forward to another role. Now, this person said it, I don't believe with any maliciousness.
No.
It was a passing comment that they won't have thought twice about. But I think because I was so young at that point, it really shocked me, and it knocked me and stunted my confidence in a way that perhaps it wouldn't now that I understand that a bit more. And I think my final bit of advice would be how important it is to just empower and encourage those people around you. I think just because we're in a competitive industry, whether that's conservation television, no matter what you're in, even if it's competitive, it doesn't mean you have to be in competition with others. And I think that's something as well that perhaps television, but films stereotype women saying that they can't get along with each other, or there's always going to be competition there. And I think that's something that needs completely debunking, because it's not true, and you need teamwork. And that would be my big bit of advice, I think.
Okay. Do you have anything else you want to share about everything that you've done? I'm so impressed by your whole career. It's just amazing to me.
Oh, thank you. No, I think the big thing is just, if anybody has, like I've already said, a passion to do something, just go ahead and do it. I think there'll always be people that try and put you down for one reason or another. something else I would say, if you've got an interest of something, reach out to people, because everyone's only human. And if you're interested in particular species or environment or ecosystem, and there's someone working in that field, I would say just reach out, chat to them, and find out as much as you can about it, and really go for it.
So did you have a mentor in the film industry at all, or you just went in kind of sight unseen?
I went in a little bit blind.
Yeah.
I mean, so I graduated. I then went to Kenya for 6 months to do the project. Then I moved home to Scotland with my family, but they live in a really remote area. I would have to drive half an hour just to download an email. So it wasn't working for the sort of work I wanted to do, an industry I wanted to do. And Bristol is the heart of wildlife television. So I thought, okay, well, I've got to move there. And a room came available on Facebook that was available for a month. And I thought, okay, I have no job there, no friends. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm going to move and see what happens. And so I moved to Bristol. And a few days after arriving, a friend was going to come into the city, and I was going to go meet them for this thing called the balloon fiesta. And long story short, I got on the wrong bus. I got completely lost. I had no idea where I was, but I saw a family walking with a young kid. I thought, okay, they look approachable, I'll ask for direction. So I went over, and they said that I said, I don't know where I am, how do I get to the balloon fiesta? And they said, well, we're going, why don't you walk with us? So I started walking, and they asked what brought me to Bristol, and I said what I was interested in. And by the time we got to the balloon fiesta, the lady actually turned around and said, well, I'm a producer and I've got a job I think you'd be perfect for. Why don't you give me your email and we can have a chat? So I pushed her baby in the pram while she put her email in my phone. Met with her a couple of days later, had an interview, and started work the following Monday. That was my first job in the industry. So,
oh my gosh.
And since then, I think it's just, I've worked with so many amazing people. It's not, I wouldn't say there's one person that has sort of mentored me, but on every team I've been on, there've been amazing men and women that I really admire and aspire to do and be like. So yeah.
Yeah, well, that sounds amazing. I
would advise people just hang around a bus stop and ask people for jobs. I'm not sure that would get a great response. But yeah, it did work for me. And I think that's the key thing. You just never know when an opportunity is going to come about. And as long as you're open to opportunities and experiences, anything really, really is possible.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I think that's all we have time for right now. But I want to thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed our conversation. And
all right, awesome. Thanks.
Thanks.